Okay, I'm here with Steve O'Hare from SCLO Consulting. Steve, the new government have been in for a little while now. Let's look at some of the things that they may or may not be implementing in the coming months and years. So let's start with the government's plans for the employment and skills arena. Anything that you can tell us now?
Okay, yeah, well, I think the time of the general election was quite interesting because actually the start of July going into August, it's almost as soon as the results come, you have a recess period, which it was quite unusual and not something we've generally had too many times before. So things are still a little bit vague. However, there is quite a lot of acts have already been passed. Parliament's already before its recess. There was a number of things went in that will lead to changes in skills and employment type activity and the current range of devolution. So in terms of the high level, fundamentally it's kind of more of the similar. With sort of nuances around the edges. So in terms of employment support, there's a greater view of continuing that, but with engagement at a more localised level. The skills arena, there are a few things that we can come on and talk about, particularly around Skills England and that ilk, and the skills and the apprenticeship and skills levy. They're slightly different to what we have, but fundamentally in the same sort of wheelhouse. And we are, looking at trying to tackle economic inactivity and also youth unemployment, which is starting to become a real bit of a problem again in the UK, which is a little bit of a surprise given the surprise of the last government letting it get to where it's got to, given the amount of effort and work that they put in during the lockdown period to try and prevent that from happening. But I guess that's changing priorities of a government towards the end of its term.
Yeah, sure. Talking to the old government, we've done a lot of stuff previously with that government about devolution and the way things were heading to a more localised level.
Yeah.
Do you expect that to continue now that the Labour have formed the new government, or do you
absolutely
expect it to change?
No, it's absolutely more of the same, at least for the foreseeable next 3 or 4 years. So as I'd mentioned, there's a number of acts have been put into Parliament, one of which is around devolution. Actually, the devolution process is going to continue, but the purpose of this act is to try and streamline things a little bit and actually speed up the process of local government being able to spend the money that's been allocated to them. Under the last administration, there was a huge amount of delay and red tape for local authorities and for combined mayoral authorities to access things like the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It just took forever for them to get through the process to get the money to then procure the activity to then get it rolled out and gone. So I think we'll have more of the same, however, in a much more streamlined part at the front end. So actually the bit from central government to local government to hopefully then speed things up in the real world on the coalface.
Yeah, again, pre-election there was a real focus on growth and skills levy. What does that mean, and what is that likely to mean now? So
that was the main sort of skills piece of that whole growth and that levy and a shift change from the apprenticeship levy. I think there's always the argument that employees don't always get what they want, and I think that's an argument that's been going for a number of years. So in my view, it's that you'll still have the apprenticeship piece. That's a really critical part of the government's priority going forward for addressing skills needs. However, I think there's that greater flexibility of what employers will be able to spend money on. My initial feel of what that could potentially look like, it will be things like around the boot camp agenda. So will they be able, rather than having to pay a premium if you want to upskill your own staff through a boot camp, actually being able to use some of that levy money to be able to go and put that into there. Or it's shorter courses, it's quicker courses, it's those sorts of accredited learning that is there, but just trying to join it up a little bit more and being able to attract that or access funding for that for their own staff.
Okay. We've also heard a lot about Skills England recently. Yeah. What is that and what will that do?
Yeah, so it's a similar thing with a different ribbon, I think, a lot of the time. And having been in this arena for a number of years, you do tend to see
Okay. But finally, how do you anticipate the proposed youth guarantee fitting into the new plans?
Yeah, I mean, this is really important, as I alluded to earlier. We're now up to 1 in 8 under 16 to 24 year olds now classified as NEET, which is astronomically bad levels. That's pre-lockdown, end of the 2018, 2019 levels again, which is really, really bad for our young people. And I do understand why it's happened ultimately. A lot of programmes that did exist that supported that sort of target group are no longer there. So at the end of the European Social Fund programme, a lot of the NEET programmes disappeared. They weren't picked up again by UK SPF, which has left a huge hole. They've also defunded study programmes and those sorts of things in such a bigger way than they had, and which did attract those that weren't staying in school, weren't staying in education, weren't going to college, and actually supported them once they dropped out. The minute that support's not there, so this youth guarantee, which will hopefully provide that engagement piece for young people to get back into education or employment or training, will be really critical, and hopefully something that is addressed sooner rather than later once Parliament starts again on the 4th of September.
Wonderful. Steve O'Hare, Managing Director of SCLO Consulting, thank you.
Thank you.